These are craziest alien conspiracies discussed on the Joe Rogan Podcast.
Episode number 1856 with Nate Bargatze. Joe Rogan breaks down the most convincing modern UFO and alien evidence.
But pumas are, an established animal. To have like some cryptozoological creature like Bigfoot that's undetected. But it's fun.
It's fun.
I want to believe.
Yeah.
But I don't really.
Well, that's like in the ocean. Like they find some big fish, or some big whale, like extra, like some, and you're like, I don't know, dude, we never knew it was down there.
There's two.
Well, don't they think aliens could live in the ocean? So, I mean, that's how much.
That was Jeremy Corbell was talking about that the other day. That they, it's hard to say like what kind of information he's getting, how accurate it is. But they're basically saying, think about the movie Abyss, where the aliens lived underwater. He was like, that's probably what's going on.
Yeah.
That there's some sort of alien base underwater or some meeting place, or that's where they hide. That's where they go to be undetected.
Do you think you're going to see it in your lifetime?
Bigfoot or aliens?
Aliens. Like, where it's like, like we have to like talk to them now. We have to like interact with them.
There's a video that is impossible to ignore. There's some things that are impossible to ignore. And then there's eyewitness testimonies of people who are rock solid, totally dependable, like fighter pilots who have seen some things. Like the best example is this guy, Commander David Fravor, who was off the coast of San Diego in 2004. And this is corroborated by multiple points of data. They had this tracking system that tracks things above Earth's atmosphere, and they found this thing went from above 60,000 feet above sea level to 50 feet above sea level in less than a second. They have no idea how it's doing this. They have no idea. There's no method of propulsion that's visible. They followed this thing. They locked onto it. It blocked their radar. It blocked their tracking systems, rather. And then it jetted off at an impossible rate of speed. And then the Nimitz relocated this thing at their cat point. The cat point is where the fighter pilots, when they're doing this test, they're doing this exercise, they were supposed to meet at this very specific point. And that's where this thing had gone. Like this thing had read their manifest and knew, like, or read their plans and knew where they were going.
What's wild?
That is way more compelling to me than Bigfoot. The Bigfoot thing is just fun, but the alien thing is fun and likely. There's something going on. And I go back and forth. Sometimes I think maybe it's some sort of government drone that's like so sophisticated, and it's totally top secret. And if we ever go to war with China, that's when they're going to break it out. And then sometimes I think what they are is something that's monitoring us and making sure we don't blow ourselves up, making sure that we make this journey from territorial apes with thermonuclear weapons into some sort of an advanced intergalactic society, and that there's a very crucial moment where the instincts of these tribal people, which is all of us, all human beings, are these tribal territorial people, where you have to keep them from sabotaging any possible future progress by blowing themselves up, by killing each other, by
what if we talk to them and then when you say that, they go, yeah, that was it. Is that easy? Like, not that easy, but like, you just go, is that it? You go,
yeah,
that's about it.
We're trying to keep you guys from blowing yourselves up. This is like, but maybe that's like the natural thing that you see. Like when civilizations advance, like there's a very precarious moment where like they have the capability of blowing themselves up, but the reason and the logic to not do it, but they also have these instincts to control resources and take over territories. They still have those instincts, but they have to bypass that. They have to figure out how to, and so that's when aliens start circling and just keeping an eye on us.
Yeah.
That's the primary.
I mean, that's what you would hope, right? Instead of like them attacking us.
Yes.
Because then so.
I think if they were going to attack us, they would have already done it. Like if they really could do all those things, they could probably take out our power grid pretty easy. Apparently, the stories are that they're able to shut down nuclear launches and nuclear facilities, and that they do that, and they hover over military bases, and that they just shut everything down just to let you know, hey, bitch, I can
That's
just
wild.
flip that switch. So don't get too fucking squirrely out there.
That's so crazy.
In MMA show number 107 with George St. Pierre, wild theories on UFOs, ancient tech,
pyramids, and hidden human history.
This is one of the things that they say, people that have been abducted. I had Travis Walton, this guy.
I've seen. I've watched it.
His
Yeah,
bobblehead.
Yeah, I've watched it.
Very compelling in his descriptions of his encounter with these beings. But one of the things that he was saying was they were talking to him, but it wasn't with words. Like they were communicating with him, and he understood what they were saying, but it wasn't. They weren't saying things in a like, "Hey, Travis, why don't you relax? Because we're here from planet fucking whatever it is."
The information was flowing faster
Yes.
because it was like boom right away. What I think, you get it.
Yes, they were explaining things to him in some sort of a telepathic way.
Wow.
And it was mind-blowing to him. And I think that that's probably the future of communication. Just like you can transmit information from phone to phone, right? You can call people. They're nowhere near you, but you can talk to them. You can send a video to someone. It's going through the air. It's just data, right? It's just information.
Do you think Travis and Bob Lazar and all these guys that have extraordinary claim believe what they are telling you? I don't know if what they believe is true, but what do you think they believe what they are telling you in a way that they're not lying, they're telling the truth of what they're believing?
I can't tell for certain, but I believe Bob Lazar. I believe what he's saying is true. I believe he's telling me. Now, Bob, he had one moment where he was passing by a window and he said he saw something that was small and these people were standing over it, and he didn't know if it was an alien or whether it was some sort of a form that they were trying, like a doll or something that's supposed to represent the size of an alien or some sort of a model of an alien. But he remembers he looked briefly through a window and he saw something small. He didn't see it move around, didn't see it talk, so he doesn't know what he saw. Yeah. Because in his world, as he explained it, when he was working at Area 51, Site 4, that's where he worked, he said that it was very compartmentalized. And he's saying it was one of the problems with them trying to figure out, now this is assuming he's telling the truth.
Yeah, of course.
One of the problems they were trying to figure out was how to back engineer these devices, these ships. But the problem was they weren't allowed to communicate with other people outside of this very limited group of people that had access to these vehicles. And the people that were involved in the metallurgy were not allowed to communicate with the people that were involved in whatever the propulsion system was. They didn't understand what they were trying to decipher these things. But he said, and if you listen to the podcast that I did with him, that it didn't work because the scientific method requires multiple people to communicate and share ideas and explain, and they didn't do that.
You can't improve like that.
Right.
You need to share idea. Right. You can't do something and compartmentalize everything.
But my communication with him, I don't know if he was telling me the truth, but he didn't seem deceptive. Yeah. And he's a brilliant guy.
It's clear he's clearly like borderline genius. You hear him speak, he's very educated.
And some of the things that he talked about came to fruition. Like one of the things was there was a concept of this thing called element 115, right? Yeah. Now that was not really proven until the 2000s or somewhere in the 2000s. They used a particle collider and created this thing where it was a very unstable, very short-lived particle. But he was saying that wherever these beings are from, they have figured out a way to utilize a stable version of this element 115, and that's how they propel themselves. The things that he was describing were also exactly the same things that were experienced by Commander David Fravor, who was a guy who is a jet pilot.
I saw, yeah.
Yeah, and so he experienced this thing move in that same direction, that same way, where there was no visible propulsion system, but they tracked this thing going from 80,000 feet above sea level to 1 in 1 second. So that's the amount of time that it takes radar to track this. So it might have been less than a second.
Yeah,
this thing traveled from 80,000 feet to 1,000.
No time.
To 1 feet.
It's like that thing with the hand. He says he measured the distance between the bone and when you get in, you put your hand in it and measure the distance between your bone and the...
the scanner.
Yeah.
Yes, the scanner.
There is a lot of things like this. And, you know, like Zachariah Sitchin was, you know, like there's a lot of stuff that you can think of that how could they know that at the time? But it's
well, the Zachariah Sitchin stuff is interesting, right?
Yes.
That's all the Sumerian text. The Sumerian text is some fascinating stuff because it's all from 6,000 years ago. And by the way, Zachariah Sitchin, he's very controversial. There's even a website called sitchiniswrong.com, and it's basically scholars of ancient Sumerian who say that his translations are completely off. But even if his translations are off, there's still a lot of really confusing stuff about ancient Sumer. And one of the things is their depictions of the solar system. They had a depiction of the solar system 6,000 years ago that shows the sun in the center, and it shows all of the known planets in the outside. And they're relatively accurate in terms of the size.
Yeah, and how about the formation of the Earth? Tiamat, Marduk. I don't remember which one is what, but that's
formation of the Earth.
That's the model that we use today.
Well, the scientists...
The asteroid belt,
Yes.
That's the model that we use today. How did he know that at that time?
I don't know how they knew that. When you're saying it's Earth 1 and Earth 2, and what that means is that there was an original version of Earth, and then Earth was hit by another planet at some point in the distant past. And that's what created the moon, and that's also what created the asteroid belt.
That goes on the different direction than the rest of the planet. Like they knew that too.
Well, there's also a thing called Bode's Law, and Bode's Law measures the distance between planets, and it's based on the mass of the planet, and they figure out, because of the mass of the planet, how far these planets are from each other. And one of the things that fucks that up is the asteroid belt. I think what I might be wrong about this, but the distance between Mars and Jupiter is one of the things that screws that up, and they think that's explained by the asteroid belt, that some collision created this asteroid belt and created all of the... I mean, there's something like 900,000 known near-Earth objects that were created by the impact of these planets.
One thing I believe, and I'm sure it's the same because you had a lot of these guys on your podcast, like Graham Hancock,
Yes.
Randall Carson, Jonathan E. West. There's clearly knowledge that we've lost in the past. This is for sure. Just think about the Library of Alexandria.
Yes.
Man, imagine the knowledge that it wasn't there before it burned.
I know. Imagine.
Oh, man.
Imagine.
People thinks we lost like 1 millennia, like just when it burns. Of knowledge, medicine, botany, science. It's just crazy to think of. So sometimes when crazy stuff happen like that, I just think that perhaps they had knowledge that there's knowledge that we lost. Just think about the Greek fire. It's a weapon that was used in the naval battle, and it's really, really known about historian. You can research. They still don't know exactly how it works, but it was so destructive. It was like, at the time, it was like a secret weapon. Like they didn't want to share. And it was known to be very efficient in naval battle.
I don't know what that is. I don't know about
Greek fire. If you go Greek fire, you'll get it. Boom. It was used in naval battle. So they used to throw fire, flames. And people that are burning, they still burn in the water. So they think it was made with some kinds of petrol or they still don't know. They cannot recreate it. And it's clearly something that a lot of historians have talked about. It's called Greek fire. It's just an example that it's clear that it's a technology that we have lost.
Well, if you just look at the pyramids, the pyramids are a perfect example of technology lost. It's almost like the best example. Those ancient civilizations almost letting everyone know, hey, there is information that we have that's so above and beyond what's expected of people from this era. Yeah. Because if you think about people that lived 2,500 BC, you don't think about someone that had the kind of proficiency to create something that, when people don't understand, it's not just that the pyramids were big, but they were so perfectly designed that when they put all the stones, they reached the top. Like if anyone was off by even a half an inch at the bottom, as time went on, an inch here, an inch there, by the time they got to the top, it would be all fucked up. It wouldn't be perfect. But the pyramids were so amazingly perfect, and they were originally covered in smooth limestone. So smooth, polished limestone that would probably be insane to look at if you were staring at it from a distance. Like this immense structure of 2,300,000 stones, some of them cut from quarries hundreds of miles away, all perfectly aligned and put together by these people that lived thousands and thousands of years ago.
You know, most scholars would say that they use a ramp, but if you think about it, like there's other scholars that would counter that by saying the construction of that ramp need to be in an angle that it could be so difficult to do that it will challenge the construction of the pyramid itself, you know?
Well, again, it's like maybe they use a ramp. I don't know what they used.
Yeah, we don't know, yeah.
But whatever they used, it's so amazingly precise that they were able to make this 2,300,000 stone structure. This still to this day. I haven't been, but I have friends that have gone. Like my friend Andrew Schultz just went. Danica Patrick, the race car driver, she told me she just went. People that I know that have been. My friend Eddie Bravo, when he went, he's like, you get there, you're like, what the fuck? Yeah. It's so big, apparently.
It's like an awakening.
Yes, that our idea of what it is, when you see it in a photograph, it looks incredible. But I guess I need to go, because I guess when you see it in person, it's just like a complete reset. Like it recalibrates what people are capable of, because you have to think like, man, this is 4,500 years old.
Think about Darren Kuyu, Gobekli Tepe.
Yes.
Man, it's
Gobekli Tepe's 10,000 years older, right?
Yeah, it's like 12,000 years old. You know, like
at least.
Like how do you conceive that? And sometimes what happens is that it gets and infected by other civilization that passed there after that construction. So they think they are the one that built it. I think is it Pumapunku, the one that there's clearly two different technology. You see the stone are perfectly aligned with perfectly cut. Then you have other stone that are just on top, like it's like a butcher's job, you know. And it's clearly not the same technology, the same people that built these two layers, you know.
Right.
So
well, that was also John Anthony West's concept of Egypt, that there's multiple eras, and that if you go deeper, like some of the stuff that they found when they dig deeper in the sand was a different construction method. It looked different designs, but still equally complex and fascinating. It's like there's probably many eras of human civilization, and there's probably been whatever it is, whether it's disease or some sort of a natural disaster or something that happened. Asteroidal impact was John Anthony or was Randall Carlson's and Graham Hancock's. That's their theory. Is
12,000 years ago, at the end of the Pleistocene era.
Yes.
But Homo sapien is date to 3,000 years old. So imagine
how many?
3,000.
No, Homo sapiens.
Homo sapiens 3,000.
I think it's older than that. I think it's several hundred.
300,000. Sorry.
Oh yes.
300,000. Sorry, my English.
Yeah. Oh, right.
Homo sapien is 300,000 in Morocco. I'm 100% sure. That's why I read about this kind of stuff.
I think they think it's somewhere in that neighborhood. Yeah.
Yeah. But so if you take that 300,000. Sorry. 300,000 time for an evolution.
Right.
Why would it be only in the last 10,000 years that we would,
invent such immense structures?
It's kind of strange. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it's also we're so different from all the other animals. Like we're the only animal that wears shoes. We're the only animal that wears clothes. We're the only animal that really manipulates its environment the way we do. I mean, other animals think, bees make beehives and shit like that, but they don't do anything even remotely interesting in comparison to what we're capable of doing and what we have done for thousands and thousands of years. And why? One of the things that Bob Lazar said that he was taught when he was at Area S4, at Area 51 S4, was that one of the things that they were telling him was that human beings are the product of accelerated evolution, and that these creatures occasionally come back to check upon our progress. And yeah, which is crazy.
Wow.
But that might be how it works throughout the universe, is that these beings that are very far advanced, they come back and they see these creatures that are pretty close, and they give them a little boost. They push them ahead a little bit, because otherwise it would take so long, and maybe we don't have the amount of time because of the fact that we're in this fucking shooting gallery of asteroids, that these things come down and whatever progress you make is wiped out by impacts or by supervolcanoes.
It's crazy, but it's not that crazy. If you look at the belief of human being through evolution, like in ancient Greek, they believe in different, they were believing in different gods, like in different times, different civilization had different belief. Now some people believe Jesus walk on water, which is fine too. That's their belief, If you believe that human was, the result of alien beings, it's another belief,
it's not.
Everybody believe in different things.
It's not that crazy if you think about what we're doing.
Episode number 2331. Jesse Michaels explores bizarre. Episode number 2318. Harold Sonny White discussing radar signatures, plasma illusions, and an unnerving forest UFO in 2416. Dan Farah reveals alleged alien contacts, crashed craft recoveries, and an 80-year government cover-up.
Hopefully it all comes out and people can legally talk about it at some point, but
can you talk about it without?
I know there's been multiple contact events. Like straight up, straight up contact events. One of them is revealed in the film, actually, but there are more. There was this. Several of the people in my film talk about an event that happened at Halleman Air Force Base where two non-human crafts approached the base, one landed, beings walked out and interacted with Air Force officials and CIA officials. And a couple people go on the record talking about that in the film. But there have been other events, I've been told.
How are those beings described?
They were described as tall, slender, humanoid. And the another thing that I heard that gave me chills was that someone involved with a recovery interacted with a non-human being that was dying and heard thoughts in his head that said, "You humans don't know your full potential." And that was said to me by a very senior, older guy from the intelligence community, and I thought that was pretty incredible. Also, just the extent to which the legacy program is real. This isn't like 50 guys, sitting in a quiet, dark room. You're talking about a massive program with thousands of people going to work every day and dealing with this. And to me, that is mind blowing.
Yeah.
The guy next to you at the pizza place, on a Saturday night might be working on this during the day.
Right.
The guy who, the other father at your kid's Little League game.
Yeah.
This is what he deals with, right? The fact that is a thing, and we had a similar dynamic for the Manhattan Project. There were all these people working on it, and they kept it secret, right? And their neighbors and friends didn't know. But this is that on steroids. So, after the Manhattan Project, which was had a budget in the billions, this situation arose, and it had to be even more secret than the Manhattan Project, because the Manhattan Project, we found out in hindsight, leaked, right? There were moles.
Right.
So we needed to make this even more secret and give it more money and more resources and more, counter intel. And
more threats.
Which is counter intel,
Yeah, I mean, threats if you reveal those secrets. But it's like the more this stuff gets discussed, the more I go back to what Lazar said. Because what Lazar is describing from the 1980s is exactly what these people are saying now. They've had these things. They've been trying to figure them out. They've been working on them. At least in the 1980s, they hadn't totally cracked it yet. But they did know how to operate them, and that they would do these tests. But everything was so compartmentalized. He said he wasn't allowed to talk to the metallurgist. There was different people that were assigned to it.
Yeah.
What they were assigned to do was to try to figure out how the propulsion system worked.
Yeah.
And then there was other people that were assigned to try to figure out how the metallurgy was formed. Because whatever it was seemed like it was 3D printed. It didn't have any seams.
Yeah.
And when he talks about it, it sounds exactly like what people are talking about today, which is really bananas.
Yeah.
Because this is late 1980s, and he's the first guy to crack through with this stuff.
Yeah. Everything is so, in that secret program, everything is so siloed out where you could have one team of defense contractors who are working on one thing. They're not even told it's from an alien spacecraft. They're just told, here's the thing. It might be Russia. It might be China. Tell us how it works.
Right.
They're just kept in a little bubble. And one of the issues now is that everything's become so overclassified and so siloed that it's actually hurting progress. And that's a lot of the scientists in my film are voicing that. And one of the other things I learned recently that isn't in the film, Jay Stratton, who ran the UAP task force, he told me that during that time, he had started a talk with one of the senior scientists at Lockheed, who was frustrated by how overclassified everything was. It even made it hard for the defense contractors to get the right manpower and brains on it, because not everyone can be cleared to do the work, right? There's all these like red tape hurdles to progress, right? And so they had made a plan to move one of the crafts that had been recovered that was in Lockheed's possession into the possession of the UAP task force. And then the task force was going to be able to put more brain power towards it. And then the head of science and technology at the CIA shut it down in the middle of the transfer. They had actually secured a hangar on a military base and prepped it to be a classified hangar that would hold this craft, and they were stopped. So the issue of overclassification.
Did they know what happened after that?
Yeah, the CIA just shut the whole transaction down, and the craft stayed in Lockheed's possession. And then that particular leader within Lockheed died about 2 years later. So the effort kind of stopped. He had cancer. The overclassification is definitely a hurdle for this. And our competitors don't necessarily have that. Like there's no free will in China. She can just be like, hey, you're the smartest guy graduating your class. You're going to go work for the nation on this,
Right, period.
And here, the problem is no one knows it's real. One of the things I hope the film changes is it makes the scientific community know that this is a valid area of inquiry. This is real. It's a real situation. And there's a ton of problems for the next generation of engineers and scientists to solve, And so hopefully it inspires them and helps us make progress, because there's a lot of progress that could be made here.
Well, it certainly seems like it, but it's like one of the things that you guys propose in the film that I think may be the only way forward is some sort of a mass amnesty to all these people that did lie to Congress and probably misappropriated funds and maybe stole them a little bit here and there. Like if that doesn't happen, no one is going to push to make this public. No one's going to push for like actual full disclosure, because it leaves them too exposed. And if they do have the kind of power that they must have to be running an organization of thousands of people working on something with unbelievable amounts of money being transferred to these programs, they don't want to let that go.
Yeah.
Like this is like it's a honeypot that they're drawing from, right? And they're probably still taking too much, or there's no oversight. You're still lying to Congress. And you'd have to have some national security amnesty program saying, look, in the interest of national security, it's critically important that we get all of our best people working on this. The only way we're ever going to really do that is to completely reveal that this is actually really happening. This is real crafts from somewhere or something. We have them. We'll tell you where we have them. And I think right now, people wouldn't even freak out, because I would think that people would freak out if there was some sort of official narrative of disclosure. But that's sort of been breached, right? The New York Times breached that in 2017.
I think this film is that. I mean, this is 34 credible people putting their reputation and name on the line, which I honestly, Joe, I think it's stronger evidence than any video or photo. These days, you could put a 4K video of a giant craft over Vandenberg, and half the human population will say it's AI,
right,
or creating some visual effects program. But someone of note putting their name and reputation on the line, their career on the line, the rest of their lives on the line, to say this is what I know to be true. To me, that's the greatest evidence that exists. But I do think, to your point, amnesty is something that's gonna have to be figured out, because while it's hard for anyone to accept letting people off the hook for wrongdoings, right? It does seem like it's in the best interest of the bigger picture.
100%.
Because these people just aren't good. They have no incentive to come forward with what they've learned. And so to quote Rubio in the film, he says, look, this is not a endeavor to go and punish anyone, but we need to know what they learned.
Right.
And I think he's totally dead on. And, you know,
is he in favor of some sort of an amnesty program as well?
Yeah, he says on camera in the film, he's like, I'm not trying to punish anyone. I need to know what they learned because taxpayers paid for this, and it's in our interest to know what's going on. But the other thing that's needed is real whistleblower protection, not the whistleblower protection that's been passed so far, like much stronger legal protections, so that people like the folks I talked to, the special forces guys I talked to, were going to come forward and then decided they thought to be forfeiting their lives. You've got to change that set of circumstances. You got to make those people feel like that's not going to happen to them.
Right.
And what I think ultimately is going to have to happen, and I wouldn't be surprised, man, if it happens soon after the film comes out, I think a sitting president has to step to the microphone and say, definitively, humanity's not alone in the universe. We have recovered technology of non-human origin. So have other nations. There is a high-stakes secret Cold War race to reverse engineer this technology. We need to win this race, and the U.S. intends to lead in this new chapter. I think that needs to happen, like a level set of basic facts, and I really do think it will happen.
Well, if that is going to happen, I think Trump might be the only guy that's willing to do something crazy.
I think it's very likely that he does that. I know that he is aware of the film. I know he's aware of what people in his administration say.
Has he watched it? You know that?
He has not watched the film, but I know he's very aware of it, and I know that they are discussing internally how they're going to react to the film publicly. And I also know that he has very recently, tasked Tulsi Gabbard with getting to the bottom of the situation and finding out for him what he needs to know that he doesn't know.
Really?
Yeah. And as Rubio said in the film, Rubio says on camera, on the record, on the film, that this has been kept from sitting presidents. And he goes into detail on how that's been done and how it's the career bureaucrats in certain elements of the government that control this information and just wait presidents out and don't feel like they have a need to know.
Right. Well, there were some people that tried to find information out in the beginning of the Trump administration. Who was it? There was someone that talked about it on record and said he was told at every turn that you don't have the clearance.
Yeah. But here's the thing. Trump actually found out about the base facts in his last presidency and was contemplating stepping to the microphone then.
What base facts?
So Jay Stratton, who ran the task force, he says on camera in my film that he briefed that Mnuchin, the Secretary of Treasury, asked for a briefing on the lay of the land because Trump asked him to get the briefing, and Trump had already known that the base facts that we're not alone in the universe, that there's been recovery of crashed craft, right? He knew those base facts, and he told Mnuchin that he was thinking about going public. And so Mnuchin reached out to Stratton to get a briefing, and he told Stratton that the reason he wanted the briefing is because he needed to be able to evaluate what the impact would be to the economy if the president decided to step to the mic and tell the world we're not alone. And Stratton tells the story on camera in the film, and I've heard a lot more about it off camera. So we know Trump contemplated doing this already. Now I think the release of this film and Rubio's involvement puts enough on the table that it makes it easier for him to do.
I think they would have to have some sort of a plan in place if they were going to say that, right? Like the amnesty plan, the idea behind it would have to be in place. If someone's
at least grab control of the situation and say that this is real and the U.S. intends to lead the way. Because the other factor that the White House has to keep in mind is you don't want Xi or Putin being the guy to do that.
Right.
You don't want them to have that moment, right?
Right.
Something I was thinking about with regards to that moment of a president stepping to the mic, when we entered the space race, Kennedy gave that big famous speech, right? He was like, we're going to lead in space. Technology, space technology, like nuclear technology, has no conscience of its own. It's up to man to use it for good or bad, and we're going to make sure it's used for the betterment of all mankind, and we're going to lead the way. That was his whole rallying speech, right? And it made the whole scientific community be like, we're going to help the U.S. win, rah, 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 right? I think that's needed in this race. We need all the support of the scientific community, of academia, the kids coming out of MIT, we need them putting their brain power towards this. And I think the White House knows that. And it's also the greatest, that's the greatest TV moment a leader could have in the history of humanity. Step into the microphone.
Do you think Elon knows?
Look, I've seen him obviously talk to you about it. I think he knows a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think you get the contracts and the clearances you need to operate in space without some horse trading.
Yeah, when I went to SpaceX, I'm like, motherfucker, you know everything. There's no way you're launching these fucking things into space without them keying you in on exactly what's going on. He's just sly about it.
Well,
He goes, well, if they're all aliens, they're certainly all subtle. That's what he says. Like, well, are they really? I don't know, man.
I think it's impossible to operate in space like he does and not be aware of everything. And also at the level he operates clearance-wise. I held a secret screening at the National Space Symposium earlier this year, which is the Super Bowl of the space industry. It's like 60 people, heavy hitters from the space industry. We didn't promote it or publicize it at all, but there were a dozen guys from SpaceX there, and they all seem very aware of everything revealed in the film.
Yeah, I'm positive.
Yeah,
he's my friend, and he won't tell me.
He's a legend.
He keeps a lid on it.
He's a legend.
But how would he not know if it is? And some people have told me he knows that know he knows some things. So whatever. But the point is, people are good at keeping secrets. That's real.
100%.
Even people that aren't notoriously good at keeping secrets are good at keeping secrets when they have to be.
Do you think if you put yourself, you've interviewed Trump, do you see him doing that? Stepping to the mic and telling us the truth?
Someone talks to him about it and convinces him it's a great idea. Like if I had an hour with him.
I mean, it's literally the single, in my opinion, the single greatest moment a leader could have.
Well,
in the history of the world.
If he could be the guy that blows the lid off of it, that would definitely help with his legacy too, which I think would be a good way to convince him.
Episode number 2264. Jason Sands recounts a chilling encounter with a pale, earless humanoid near a UFO crash site and its telepathic request for material. Episode number 2348. Lucas Nelson and Joe Rogan dive into biblical angels, UAP mysteries, and impossible flight tech. 2365. Anna Paulina Luna reveals claims of interdimensional beings and hidden UAP evidence. Episode number 1976. James Fox recounts the Varginha encounter, terrified witnesses, strange creature, and men in black.
So we're following and pleading with him all the way out there. Please, just tell us, please. I swear on my life this happened. He gets in the car, doors open. He looks up, and the only reason why I'm telling you this is because he died. He looks up at Marco and I, and he goes, "It happened." Closed the door, and off he went. Now, the reason why I share that is because that's not something that I can put any weight on for the documentary for people like you, right? But as a personal message for me, knowing that level of validation on the inside, it kept us going. It was like, okay, why on earth would he have done that? Why on earth would he say? And that kept Marco and I going, and that was a personal level of validation. That
is there any conventional explanation why the military shut everything down, why they had military barricades set up around that area?
No, they did try to say that the creature was this guy who's got like some deformities, but I've seen the guy, Modine or something like that. But you talk to the witnesses.
But why would the military shut the town down because of a guy with deformities?
And then for the doctors in the hospital, they said, there was like a midget having a baby or something weird, just something that was just so ridiculous. It was like, and you talk to the witnesses and they're just like, oh, come on, I'm not even gonna, that's laughable at best. I mean, these girls came within 8 to 10 feet. Three women, Katya, 2 sisters, Liliani and Valkyria, 14, 16, and 21. They got within 8 to 10 feet in broad daylight of this creature. And one of the things that doesn't come across in the film, when they saw this thing, they're looking like, what are we looking at here? They're walking through this field, and it's up against a cinder block wall. And one of them's looking at it, what is that? And it was crouched by the wall. It was weak and feeble. And one of them kind of like screeched. Like, what is that? And it turned, and it looked right at the girls, locked eyes on them. Liliana grabs her younger sister, who's 14, Valkyria, and hightails it out of there. Katya is 21. She's frozen in her tracks, locked eyes with this creature, and it's communicating with her. Please help me. He wants help. It's weak, and it's feeble, and it's scared, and it's crouched down. Liliana realizes that Katya is back there. She gets, 100 feet down the path. She leaves her sister, stay here, I'm going back to get Katya. She runs back. And I asked Katya, and I asked all the girls, during that moment of contact, when you lock eyes, I know it's only a brief second, but during that moment of contact, what did you feel? Like, put me there. That's where the title comes from, Moment of Contact, because that was when they locked eyes on this creature. And that's when Katya said, help me, I'm scared. And it was feeble and suffering. And it's a very powerful moment. And these girls have been saying the same thing. The mother, it's the first time I'd ever reported on these so-called like men in dark suits that show up and intimidate witnesses. Honestly, I've been hearing about those cases for so many times, but I've avoided them because it's got so much baggage from men in black. It's just ridiculous. I just didn't even want to be associated with it. But I'd heard it. I can go on until I'm blue in the face. I go till tomorrow morning with the amount of cases, with generals too. But this time, when the mother said that these men showed up and tried to get the daughters to say they were lying and offered her a briefcase full of $100 bills and they could relocate, I don't know, for some reason I said, okay, for the first time in 25 years, I'm going to report on these guys. And I did. And it's in the movie. You can hear the mother talking about it, and she's so emotional. And the mother came back to the location right after it happened, the smell, that stench, and the footprint on the ground. I mean, everybody talks about that stench, that it was so... They said, if you ever take like a skunk, multiply that by like 100,000, that would give you some indication of the level of like how putrid and nasty. It was paralyzing. And it stayed in the areas, like at the hospitals when they did the x-rays, and everybody talks about it. That stench, it was unbelievable. Like it fills your navel cavities and doesn't leave for a week. It was incredible. And they all said the same thing.
And they couldn't get it out.
They couldn't get it out. Yeah, they sanitized the hospital. The guy said that he had to close off that wing of the hospital while they were sanitizing it because it was so intense. So
How long did it last for?
I heard days and weeks is what I heard from people. And even the mother said when she went to where the creature was, she said that the stench, even there after the creature was gone, got in her nasal cavities, and she tried to flush it out with water and saline or whatever, and she just couldn't get it out of her nasal cavities. Really crazy. But they all did. I mean, everybody talked about that stench, I mean, the military officer, the guy that drove the creature around, I was sitting across from him. You can't see his face, but I did. And I'm looking this guy in the eyes. I'm thinking, I could be looking at a guy that drove a fucking alien around. You have no idea, dude. You have no idea.
How did he describe it?
So fucking intense. When I came back from that trip, people were like, how was your trip to Brazil? What was it like, man? They got great, smoothies and coffee. And I'm just like, you guys have no idea. I think an alien spaceship crashed and they recover live aliens. And we made contact and the Americans came in. That's what I'm thinking about. So I told a couple people. On the last trip I came back, I was just like, I was so rocked. I couldn't reintegrate back into culture. I was just like, fuck, I think this happened. It's the biggest story ever. So people were asking me, even my neighbor who runs that Make-A-Wish Foundation, he was like, James, he goes, bro, I like you a lot and I got a lot of respect for you, but you lost me on this one. And I was like, I don't blame you, bro. I really don't. But listen to the witnesses. Just, that's all I say. And I would tell people, and I realized I can't talk about it. All I can say is just listen to the witnesses. Don't take it from me. But I'm looking at that guy in the eyes, Joe. And I've been at this for 30 years. I'm working on my 7th film right now. I'm looking this guy in the eyes and I'm like, this guy probably drove an alien around. And it tripped me out so hard. And it ruined his life. He's to get this guy to go on camera, just like a week earlier, he was like, I don't care all the money in the world. I'm never coming forward. The risks are too high.
How did it ruin his life?
Because you're harboring this secret. You're being watched. You're being told not to ever talk about this. And you're looking over your shoulder all the time. And they call you, the military calls you periodically. They want to know where you are. And he's got this secret inside him that he can't tell the rest of the world. And he's thinking about all the different, everyone's out there speculating, is it real, is it fake, is it real, is it fake? And this guy drove a body around. Just think about that for a second. Think about the doctor who took the x-rays of this thing. Marco Leal, thank you, Marco, you're the man. Marco Leal found him 8 years ago. And he was like, he confirmed the story. He was still working at Regional Hospital. He goes, I'll never come forward. Marco kept going every year back and forth. Then he retired. And 4 years after he retired, he agreed to meet with us. He wasn't even sure he was going to go on. And I said, look, man, we'll film you from the back. We'll disguise your voice. Showed us photographs of him at the hospital. We know we've been trying to get at him. Excuse me. At the end of the interview, he said, thank you. I feel so much better. I've been shouldering that burden for 26 years, and I've so desperately wanted to tell somebody, to share that story with the rest of the world. And you meet these people, and you think, why on earth they didn't come to us? They're not trying to sell their story. We tracked them down and begged and pleaded with them to come forward. When I found Martha, the sister of the deceased military officer, Marco Chirizi, we were knocking on doors. I remember the sound guy from Rio de Janeiro. He was like, you're out of your mind. Dude. What are you doing? You can't just knock on random doors. I was like, man, if there's a will, there's a way. I'm going to find this lady. And we found her. And it was like this kind of sketchy area. And, you know, it's like when you get out of your car and you could see like people drawing the curtains back and looking at you and you're standing out. Like, dude, I stood out like a sore thumb, man. And then we walked up. I had Marco with me, thank God, and we had camera crews and stuff. It's kind of sketchy. And Marta appears, and her husband appears in this he's a big guy, and he's got like a white beater shirt on, and he looks like he wants to rip my fucking head off. And I'm like, and she's looking at me, and he's just looking at her going, Marta's looking at her husband, and her husband's looking at Marta like, give me the signal, I'll kill this guy. That's the fucking... And I was looking at Marco, and I was like, James, you need to think quick on your feet right now. And I said immediately, please translate this. I'm here to give your brother justice. I'm here to get the story out. Please, talk to me. And we developed a relationship with her slowly over that. And those were the first words that we exchanged. And we eventually got her to come forward, and we talked. She'd gone forward in the past, but she doesn't know who the hell I am.
I want to take you back to the doctor.
Okay.
When you talked to the doctor, what did he describe?
He said that it was a normal day, January 1996. It was a regional hospital. He said every day, and all of a sudden, all these military trucks and police cars showed up at the hospital. They come in armed, and they got a bag. They got a thing in a black body bag. And he was like, what the hell's going on here? They're like, you're going to be taking some x-rays. And he's like, okay. And they had him inside, and they had armed guards. And I was asking him, like, what was it like? Because when I interview witnesses, I always ask them to project. Like sometimes I'll even close my eyes because I'll use their words to recreate. So I'm like living it through them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'll close my eyes, and I'll recreate the scenes in my head with their words, right? It's harder in Portuguese because I'm having to get it translated. But I ask questions like, what was the atmosphere like? Was there any talking? No talking. Super tense atmosphere. Very tense. Armed guards on the outside, armed guards on the inside, military trucks running. Nobody comes, nobody goes. And he said, first time in the history of my career, I took the x-rays and I couldn't even verify that they were good because they took them immediately. And then they said this event never happened. He said the stench in the hospital was overwhelming. And he goes through the different x-rays that he took, the abdomen, the head, the arms, the legs, the thorax, And it was incredible. In fact, Uberajada Rodriguez, if you're listening to this, he's one of the leading researchers. He's gone quiet. Peccaccini disappeared for 20 years.
Did he get to see images himself? Did he get to see the body himself?
Oh, he was right. Well, they didn't open the body bag, but he said the stench was just overwhelming.
So they x-rayed it through the body bag?
They x-rayed it through the body bag.
So he never got to see...
He did not see the alien.
And he didn't get to see the x-ray images or anything?
Nope. They wouldn't let him see a damn thing. Nope. Now, there were two doctors. There was a guy named Roger Lear. Roger Lear found out, these are people that I really want to meet. I mean, people are coming forward in droves right now. We just got two forensic pathologists for the first time ever working together to come forward to make statements, and they're providing documentation of the autopsy reports done on the deceased military officer. That's the first time ever these guys are coming forward. It's happening right now.
Let's explain what happened to people who haven't watched the documentary to the deceased military officer.
Yeah, so right after the three girls came within 8 to 10 feet of this creature or being or entity or ET, whatever you want to call it, about an hour later, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I would say probably maybe around 5 o'clock, there were two military guys on patrol on the lookout for something unusual, what they were told. They didn't say a UFO had crashed. They were on the lookout for something highly unusual. And it was Eric Lopes at the wheel and Marco Chirizi, military police, in the passenger seat. They were about 1.5 blocks to 2 blocks away from where the girls had seen the creature a couple of hours earlier. And this thing runs across the car in front of them. He had slammed his brakes on, and without a moment's hesitation, Marco Chirizi jumps out of the car and grabs the thing with his bare hands. Yeah. And he puts it in the back seat, and they drive it to a clinic, and the doctor is like, what the hell is that? Get it out of here. I don't know what, leave. So they went to regional hospital, and then ultimately it went to Humanitas Hospital. And so we have testimony from Military X that when he drove it from Humanitas Hospital, it's in the movie, but he drove it from Humanitas Hospital to as a military base where it spent the night in the truck for one night, and then it went from there to Espesex Campinas. It's like a university. It's where all the intellectual scientific heavyweights reside. And then it was there, I think, under examination, according to the witnesses that we talked to, for a day or two, and that's when the Americans flew in to Campinas. And we have the radar military control officer who came forward last year, actually 2 years ago when we were there filming for the last time. His name is Marco Feres, F-E-R-E-S, and he came forward for the first time and said, yeah, in January of 1996, this plane came in, USAF, he kept calling it, United States Air Force, came in and didn't have the authorization of the Brazilian government. He was like, this thing can't land. And some higher-up stepped into the room. This is his testimony. I'm just relaying what he said. He said some higher-up came in the room and said, let it land. And it came and it landed at Campinas. And then from Campinas, 2 helicopters, according to him, flew to Varginha, Brazil, Varginha back to Campinas. Then they loaded something on the airplane and then off to the United States, and that's where the case goes cold.
Episode number 1233. Brian Cox and Joe Rogan discusses alien life, panspermia, and the origins of biology.
What are your thoughts on alien life, on life outside of this planet? Is this something you think about?
Yeah, I think there must be. Even in the solar system, I would not be surprised if we find microbes on Mars or on some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn where there's liquid water.
Like Europa.
Yeah. And the reason is, if you think about, the reason I think that, and it's a guess, is because if you look at the history of life on Earth, then, so Earth formed and it was just there was no life. It was a ball of rock. And almost as soon as it cooled down, we see evidence of life. So certainly 3.8 billion years ago, possibly even further back than that, we see evidence of life on Earth. So somewhere along the line, geochemistry, active geochemistry became biochemistry on Earth. And we have some idea, that if you get gradients of temperature and acid and alkaline and the conditions that are naturally present on the surface of oceans, then complex carbon chemistry spontaneously happens. So we know that life, almost certainly we know that life began on Earth. I mean, the other option is it came from space or something like that, but it probably didn't, right? It probably began on Earth. So that means that at least here, that happened. And that we know that the conditions that led to the origin of life on Earth were present on Mars 4 billion years ago. And we know that they're present on Europa today. So I don't see that there's anything special. Life is just chemistry. And the idea that geochemistry becomes biochemistry is not fanciful because it happened here. So I think that given the same conditions, it would be surprising to me if the same thing didn't happen, in that life begins. So that's to test that is one of the great frontiers of science now. It's one of the great challenges, which is why another reason we're interested in Mars, because we know those conditions were there. We know there were what's called hydrothermal vent systems on the floors of oceans on Mars 3.8 or 4 billion years ago. So it would be good to know if what I've said is right. And the way we find out is to find life or evidence of past life.
Are you aware of the speculation that was going around? How recent was it, that Occupy thing, the octopus eggs? There was a group of scientists that were speculating that it's panspermia, the idea of panspermia, that it's possible that octopi had come from somewhere else. Some frozen eggs had actually come from somewhere else and landed on Earth. And these were like legitimate scientists that were contemplating it, not morons.
I don't think...
Have you seen this?
No, I didn't. But I mean, I think it's unlikely. So panspermia doesn't have to be unlikely.
Right.
I mean, for example, you might have seen the other day we found an Earth rock on the moon.
Yes.
Right. Well, it's back on Earth now because the Apollo astronauts brought it back, didn't they? It's 4 billion years old or something like that.
One of the oldest rocks ever found.
Yeah.
Right.
So we know that material gets transferred between planets. And so it's not inconceivable that microbes could survive that journey. Right. We know that microbes can survive in space, for example. So that isn't mad. It's probably unlikely, but it's not mad. But with the octopus, I hadn't heard that. But the thing is that the octopus is still extremely similar biologically to us. I mean, the differences are negligible.
Yeah.
So it's still got the same energy system with this thing called ATP and DNA and all that stuff. It's all very, very similar.
It was something about RNA and DNA. Did you find that article?
I'm looking at a different one from a different website. It's about the same thing. It has to do with the Cambrian explosion. And there were 33 authors on a paper that got published in the Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology that talked about this possibility. There are other people that disagree with it, though.
Right. I mean, I suppose I haven't seen it. So I think it's unlikely because the octopus is extremely similar to us. So that suggests a common origin to me. That I suppose the counter argument you could advance would be there's only one way to do life. So you could say that actually, because the laws of physics and chemistry are the same everywhere. So maybe DNA is the only way to do it. So that's the way it gets done.
Which is why they're so similar to us. Yeah, so although so alien as well.
Yeah, they're not though. That's the thing about an octopus. That's why I'm surprised about it, because they're not that alien. They're very similar.
Well, they're in their abilities. I mean, their ability to transform their outer texture and their color almost instantaneously.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they have incredible camouflage abilities that really don't exist in the mammalian world.
Yeah, but on a cellular level, you look at an octopus cell under a microscope and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Right.
Between an octopus cell and a human cell.
So the only way that would make sense is if all life comes from basically the same kind of building blocks and just varies depending upon the conditions and where it takes place.
I'm guessing, but yes, that must be the only way you could sustain that, given that they're so similar to us, because they really are, biochemically, is that's the only way it can be done, given the building block, the toolkit, the laws of nature and the elements and so on that we have in our universe.
We have so many different life forms on our planet, but if we found anything that's remotely similar to what we have here on Earth on another planet, it would be such an incredible discovery. Like if we found a frog on the moon, I mean, the world would stop, right?
I'd be very surprised if we found a frog on the moon.
But I mean, if we found anything anywhere that is in any way similar, an insect on Mars.
Well, this is... I mean, as I say, it'd be micro. I think it'd be single-celled things. Remember, I mean, you mentioned the Cambrian explosion. So that is what we do know about Earth is that although life began, let's say, 3.8 billion years ago, it wasn't until around 600 million years ago or so, or maybe at most 700, that you see any complex multicellular organisms at all. So for something like 3 billion years, it was single-celled alone. And that's one of the reasons why I would guess, if I had to guess, I would say that microbes would be common because life began very quickly on Earth. And I wouldn't be surprised if we find it on Mars. But complex life, multicellular life, insects, plants, intelligence, I would guess will be very rare because it took so long on Earth to get there. And it was just slime. About 3 billion years of slime. It was that was it.